What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at Carlito's Way, directed by Brian De Palma, starring Al Pacino and Sean Penn, with Penelope Ann Miller. Carlito's Way tells the story of Carlito Brigante, a former Puerto Rican gangbanger who is released from prison after a 5 year sentence. And instead of going back to a life of crime, he wants to reform himself and carve out a new life for himself. Though events transpire that forces him to go back to his old ways, even though it's against his will. So yeah, that is the overall story of Carlito's Way. Let's talk about it. Overall, I think Carlito's Way is an outstanding movie. I think this is one of the most underrated gangster crime movies ever made. I think it's only now that this movie's starting to get some recognition. And most importantly, I think this is probably my favorite Al Pacino movie just in general. I love Carlito's Way. Everyone loves Pacino with Scarface. When it comes to Brian De Palma, a lot of people associate his name with Scarface, but for me, it's always been Carlito's Way. I saw Carlito's way before I saw Scarface, and from the first moment I saw this movie, I loved it. I thought it was great. And what I like about Carlito's Way is the story and the character of Carlito himself. Uh, and I thought Al Pacino did an absolutely fantastic job at playing a gangster who tries desperately to distance himself away from his former life and wants to start anew now that he's approached pretty much his old age, and the fact that he knows that if he continues to be a gangbanger, his life's going to end right before his eyes, and he pretty much uses his time in jail as a wake-up call to like, hey, listen, it's time for me, it's time to distance to get out of this life and make something for myself. He has a friend who lives in the Bahamas who has a car rental ship, and all Khalil needs is 75 grand as like a down payment just to buy into that business. He wants to live that simple life, and I thought Pacino did an absolutely fantastic job at giving Carlito a lot of great nuances, a lot of vulnerability. He made Carlito come across as a very, very likable guy. Throughout this movie, Carlito is built up as like this myth, this mythological figure within the Latin crime realm. The man who can move smack like nobody else, and people fear and respect all at once. And when they finally meet him, it's almost as if they're meeting a god in a way. And I like the fact how and I love the fact how Al Pacino just says, "I'm not that guy no more. I'm just here, just visiting." But again, there are events in this movie that force Carlito to go back into that old life, despite how he tries to resist it. In the first instance, he accompanies his cousin to a drop off point. His cousin gets brutally killed, and Carlito pretty much has to kill his way out of the room, much to his dismay. I love that stuff. And when Carlito has to face guys like Benny Blanco from the Bronx, played by John Leguizamo, Carlito is basically it's a rivalry. It's Carlito basically looking at who he was 20 years prior to the start of this movie. This young up and coming type of thug. Though the difference is Carlito had more respect and finesse, while by Benny Blanco, he's just doing everything the new way, which is just kill, 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 and the second you sell an ounce, that makes you a god. Doesn't know the ethics of the street in a way. I thought all that stuff was fantastic. And again, I thought Pacino overall as Carlito, fantastic. The scenes that he does have with John Leguizamo as Benny Blanco, I like it. It establishes a dichotomy between the two characters, and it establishes a rivalry that is kind of like it's kept in the background, but you can feel its presence all throughout the movie. And when you get to the ending when Benny Blanco kills Carlito, I think to me is kind of a satisfying payoff because it's basically Carlito, the old man Carlito, being killed by his younger self. It's a very poetic death in a way when you look at it, which I thought was actually brilliant on Brian De Palma's part and brilliant on the right by David Cope's writing part. So I got no complaints with that whatsoever. I thought all that stuff was great. Now, aside from all that, this movie is also bolstered by a great supporting cast. You have Sean Penn as David Kleinfeld, who was Carlito's crooked shyster lawyer. I thought Sean Penn was great in this movie. He is that right amount of swarmy scumbag, though at first he does come across as somewhat likable. Pacino and Penn have really good on-screen chemistry with one another, And the scene, and I thought Sean Penn overall, he was great in this movie. He's great at playing a slimy scumbag, and I like Kleinfeld's little storyline where he's pretty much swindling a mob boss named Tony T, and of course he stole $1 million from Tony T. Tony T knows he did it, and pretty much Tony wants to knock off Kleinfeld. And when we finally get to the payoff of Carlito accompanying Kleinfeld to rescue Tony T, Kleinfeld kills Tony, and he kills Tony's son. He admits that he stole the $1 million, and the whole third act of this movie is pretty much Tony's other son and a bunch of mob bosses chasing down Carlito at Grand Central Station as he's trying to meet his girlfriend to escape, which is a very very thrilling, well directed, suspenseful chase. I thought it was fantastic. I love it, and all because of David Kleinfeld and his cocaine induced garbage that he's under. But in general, again, I thought Sean Penn was great in the overall movie. I like the character of David Kleinfeld, who to me, he's kind of sort of the main antagonist when you actually watch this movie, because everything that happens to Carlito is because of Kleinfeld, who is a man that Carlito has viewed as his brother and the man who basically saved his life, and he's also the man who pretty much betrayed him. And like I said, I got no complaints with Sean Penn's performance. I thought he was fantastic. Penelope Ann Miller plays the character of Gail, who is Carlito's girlfriend. I thought Penelope Ann Miller was really good in this movie. I think her and Pacino have really good on-screen chemistry with one another, and I buy the fact that they were past lovers before Carlito went to prison. And I think the relationship between them, it starts off strained, but as the movie progresses, it gets progressively stronger, and the chemistry with Pacino and Miller gets much much better as the movie goes on, particularly when you get to the ending of the movie. So, no complaints on Miller's part. Louise Guzman makes an appearance in this movie as Pachanga, who was Carlito's best friend and right-hand man in a way. I thought the scenes that Louise Guzman was in, I thought he was really good. He and Pacino have good enough chemistry where I can buy them as being close friends for a long time. Uh, I already mentioned John Leguizamo's Benny Blanco. In the scenes that he's in, I enjoyed him. I know John Leguizamo can be very hit and miss for a lot of people. I've always been a fan of Leguizamo. I got no hate on him. I actually think John Leguizamo is a very underappreciated actor. I find him to be really, really good, just in general. And I liked him in this movie, in the brief scenes that he was in. You establish that character who's going to have a big payoff near the end of the movie. James Rebhorn plays this character called Norwalk, who is this DAA agent who is tailing Carlito, when in actuality he's actually tailing Kleinfeld because Kleinfeld's a shady son of a bitch. And it's through this Norwalk character where Carlito finds out that he's pretty much being set up as a patsy by Kleinfeld. So I like that little storyline is great too, because it establishes that Carlito was being worked by Kleinfeld almost the entire time. So I got no complaint with that. I thought that I didn't feel that was rushed. I didn't even feel that was just thrown in, because the movie kind of subtly hints that there's something off with Kleinfeld and the way he does his business. So that was good too. Viggo Mortensen makes an appearance as a character called Leylene. It's a brief little cameo role, but in that brief little cameo role, Viggo Mortensen just disappears into the character that he's in. He's a guy who was once friends with Carlito. Then something happens where he almost gets killed, and he's stuck in a wheelchair. And the scene that Leylene and Carlito have is actually one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. Like, Leylene only has that one scene, but Viggo Mortensen makes the most out of it. So I love it. I would have liked to see more scenes with Leylene. I would have liked to see maybe an extended flashback with Carlito and Leylene, to be honest with you, because I liked it so much. So yeah, like, I have no complaints with the cast overall, because the cast in this movie is fantastic. Everyone brings their A game. From a production standpoint, I thought Brian De Palma and his team did a great job at capturing that 1975 aesthetic. I mean, Sean Penn, with his get-up and hairdo, he looks like a 1970s Jewish lawyer who was addicted to cocaine. So props to Sean Penn for getting into character. Props for the cinematography. This movie is beautifully shot. It looks amazing. Aesthetically, this movie's fantastic. Brian Palmer's direction, top notch. Like, this was when Brian De Palma was on top of his game as a director, and before his career kind of died with the Black Dahlia in the 2000s. This is when you can put Brian De Palma's name to a movie and you know you're going to get something incredible. So no complaints on Brian De Palma's directorial effort. I thought it was really strong. David Cope's writing, This was hot off the heels of Jurassic Park for David Cope. And now I know when this movie first came out, it was criticized. Cope was criticized, and it's only now with revisionist history that people are actually now starting to appreciate and understand Carlito's Way. Why they couldn't do that earlier, I'll never know. That's just me. I will never know. But yeah, there's a lot more to talk about with Carlito's Way, but those are just my overall thoughts on this film. As you can see, I have very little to no complaints about Carlito's Way. I love this movie. I think this movie is fantastic, which is why to me Carlito's Way gets a perfect 10 out of 10. I like this movie better than Scarface. I think Carlito is a much stronger effort than Scarface. Even though Scarface is a great movie, I think Carlito's Way tells a better story and has a much more interesting character in Carlito Bagante. And I also think that it has much more stronger writing and character development. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for Carlito's Way. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like this video and subscribe, and I will check you back next time for more.